And we are live. So, welcome to episode 89 of An American Werewolf in New Jersey. I am the American Werewolf. In the house tonight, we've got the Ryan Daly, often imitated but never duplicated, joining us for a little compare and contrast this evening. This podcast, forgive me, I lost my train of thought there for a second. This podcast started a little over a year ago. And Ryan, you were one of the first guests I had on here for episode 5. I had done a couple on my own and a couple with Bill, and then you came on for episode 5, and we covered Ravenous, and then I went back and did another one, and I think I did a compare and contrast of The Omen, which was a solo compare and contrast. Comparing the 1976 version with the 2006 version. And then we got the idea to do a compare and contrast of Nosferatu with F.W. Murnau's version and Werner Herzog's version, comparing the 1922 version and the 1979 version. And Nosferatu turns 100 this year. So that's definitely something that's cool to celebrate 100 years of Nosferatu. Yeah. And one of the things we had been talking about was coming back to the compare and contrast, and then working on Phantom of the Opera. And finally, we're here. So if you're ready to go, we can get it going.
I am absolutely ready.
All right, boogie woogie.
You're not using the little movie posters anymore for the opening?
No, in year 2, I'm trying as best I can to get away from names, images, and likenesses that I don't have permission to use.
Oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense,
So I'm trying to get away from that kind of content, running any sort of risks for the channel, so on and so forth. Hold on a second. We've got some comments here. We've got Fred Riedel saying, hola. So, hola, Fred. Did I miss this, or is this? Yes, this is it, Fred. This is it. So this isn't a replay. You're here. Fred was here in a couple of the streams, and then he left, and he couldn't get back in for some reason. He was having trouble getting back in. Okay. So, Phantom of the Opera. You and I had attempted to give this a go before, and we were really. I had never seen the silent version. You had a sort of discounted version with a couple of different movies on the sort of classic horror compilation sort of thing. We popped it in. It was better than I expected, and then in the middle of that, somehow we had a power blowout during a windstorm or something like that. And so the power didn't come back on for like another 6 hours. So that ended that right there. Months later, we come back this past weekend to watch it. And it's an interesting movie. This movie to me, and we've gone at this in various ways, but this movie to me is kind of essentially the Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, it definitely
storyline.
Absolutely is.
And I was thinking about that because I had just watched Guillermo del Toro go over his entire catalog of movies. And he started talking about Shape of Water, which is a movie I know you said you hadn't expressed much interest in, but he said his idea for that movie was essentially Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, I get it.
It's Beauty and the Beast. But what he hated was the idea in the Beauty of the Beast storyline that the Beast had to transform into this handsome prince in order. He said, otherwise it's not a love story. He said it's essentially just vanity. That the Beast is somebody that should be, kind of, because the Beast, the internal workings of the beast really don't change. It's just that people sort of cease to see him for his physical appearance and accept him for who he is. And I think there's a lot of that here, in that you have a guy who's sort of essentially judged on his disfigurement. Now, he's definitely isolated and unbalanced. Don't misunderstand. Well, I mean, maybe he is a bit more of a villain, because the Phantom starts out by hanging people, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. There's the Phantom is you don't really get much background to him until later in the story when the police are investigating him in this version. Now, I've never read the book, but it definitely is a Beauty and the Beast type story. There's no real, as far as I know, again, not having read the book, I don't think there's really any explanation for his disfigurement. He just is that way. He was almost like born that way. But from what I understand in the book, he looks exactly like he does in the movie.
Chaney's representation of him is the closest that anyone has seen.
Yes, that is one of the things I wanted to bring up is Lon Chaney was the absolute master and probably the father of movie makeup. This dude was insanely talented with what he did. And I can't imagine the pain he must have been in to contort his face like that, because he stuck these things in his mouth to make his cheeks stick out. He had these weird prosthetic teeth. The nose, he had pins stretching out his nostrils like that. So he must have been in absolute pain through the whole process. But what an iconic figure.
I'm looking at this here, and we both did a little research. It says he raised the contours of his cheekbones by stuffing wadding inside of his cheeks. He used a skull cap to raise his forehead height several inches and accentuate the bald dome of the Phantom's skull. Pencil lines masked the joint of the skull cap and exaggerated his brow lines. He glued his ears to his head and painted his eye sockets black. Adding white highlights under his eyes for a skeletal effect. He's created a skeletal smile by attaching prongs to a set of rotted false teeth and coating his lips with grease paint. To transform his nose, Chaney applied putty to sharpen its angle and inserted 2 loops of wire into its nostrils. Guide wires hidden under the putty pulled his nostrils upward. According to cinematographer Charles Van Enger, Chaney suffered from his makeup, especially the wires, which sometimes made him, quote unquote, bleed like hell.
Oh, I could imagine. I mean, if you see some of his other movies, every movie he did, like The Hunchback of Notre Dame, he did his own stuff for.
It was the quality of the makeup that he performed with the Hunchback that the movie makers allowed him the license to do that again here.
He had his own.
Clearly, you're looking at someone who gave a shit.
Oh, yeah, and I believe he had his own special makeup kit that he carried with him all the time. But holy cow, what a dedication to your craft. And he really was suffering for his art. I mean, the poor guy was dead 5 years after this movie came out. I mean, it was 1925, and he was dead by 1930 of lung cancer. He died at the age of 47. So he didn't even make it to the talkie era, but he is pretty much like the father of monster movies. I mean, this is kind of the first one of the Hollywood monster movies. This character scared the shit out of me when I was a little kid.
Yeah, they said people actually at the unmasking scene actually screamed in the theater and fainted.
I mean, it's frightening. It is a frightening thing. And that unmasking scene is probably the most famous and one for the ages. I mean, but anyway, I think he did. I forget how it exactly started. I know those guys sold the theater because they knew the Phantom was there, right?
Hold on a second. We got a couple of comments. The Devious Diva is here saying, "What's up?" And she says the version from 25 is really good. I think it is
Yeah.
impressive for its
Yeah.
time. Though there are no special effects or expensive sets, it is a version that can be enjoyed for its story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the backstory, I did a little bit of research. In the book, the Phantom is born with these disfigurements.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's born with these disfigurements. In this particular film adaptation, there were things that were edited out in
Oh,
terms of
yeah.
flashback.
Yeah.
There was flashback story that he was actually quite a villain.
Okay. Yeah.
And that
Well, they said he was nuts, right?
yeah, well, that he was practicing the occult in the Middle
Yeah.
East, and
Yeah.
that he fell out of favor with the Sultana, who at the time tortured him by having his face eaten away by insects, and
Oh,
so
okay.
that was the reason for his disfigurement. So
Wow.
I think that
That's a little much.
the book provides a more sympathetic tone in terms of a person who's simply born with the disfigurement.
Yeah.
Here, in terms of the edits and the outtakes, a lot more, deliberate,
Yeah.
sort of, moving him
Yeah.
into the from antagonist to clear villain.
Well, didn't they say that he in the movie when they were like investigating him, he escaped from like Devil's Island? He was like some criminal, like
He was the lead torturer during the French commune
during the
or
Second
something.
French Revolution, which was which is where Les Miserables takes place in the 1830s.
He was the head torturer and inquisitor at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's painting him as a very black character.
I'm glad they left that stuff out for the most part,
Yeah.
because I think it would just weigh down the story. But I mean, it's like I said, I don't know, where should we just like buzz through it real quick?
I mean, here's what I found about the movie.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the movie, but
I did.
think like in the same way that I saw when I talked about Browning's Dracula. Chaney's performance is so powerful that it just overshadows everybody else. In the same way that Lugosi's performance in Browning's Dracula overshadowed all those sort of, overly flamboyant, melodramatic sort of performers. This guy did the same thing. He's haunting the Paris house. He's, quote unquote haunting. He's killing people. He's trying to get this woman, Christine,
he's like stalking her.
Love him. I think 100 years ago they probably didn't think of this very much as stalking, although clearly he's kidnapping her. He's trying to train her to be. He's trying to get her to go from the understudy to the star. Of the Paris Opera, which I find to be very, again, along the lines of vanity, because initially the Christine character is portrayed as someone who's very interested in her career. And she's very interested in these advancements, these potential possibilities for advancement by this person until he is unmasked. And then he goes back to being a monster again.
I remember in the beginning of the movie, she chose opera over Raoul. And her cheesy boyfriend Raoul, who really is a useless character. And
fucking annoying. The guy on the right is Raoul for the people that are in the stream. Then there's
Ledoux is the guy on the left.
From the secret police.
He's supposed to be some kind of shady Middle Eastern. I don't know what he's supposed to be, Persian or something. But but his lair is just. He sleeps in a coffin. And
the set designs are gorgeous.
Oh,
the set designs are absolutely amazing. Gorgeous.
I wrote that down in one of my notes. But but the way he treats her, where he's pretty rough with Christine, grabbing her and all this stuff and throwing her around and stuff. But again, if you want to look at it from a more sympathetic perspective, perhaps, maybe that's the way he only knows how to act. He being rough with people. Who knows? Who knows how long he was hanging out in this place? We don't really know anything. you
It's a
know?
mixed bag, but I
Yeah,
personally had a mixed reaction
yeah.
because he's not a good guy.
No, he's not.
He's not a hero. He's
No,
not
he's not.
even an anti-hero. But
He's a
he's somewhere
monster.
below. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
kind of a monster, and yet at the same time, maybe it was the fact that I didn't really find any of the other characters to be likable
Yeah, I think that's what
that
it
put
was. Yeah.
him in a sort of higher position. Christine,
Mhm.
Raoul, Ledoux. You know, I think in the
And
book
this
it's probably portrayed a little better, and maybe that's just the limitations of silent film. It's
yeah.
not very good at laying out exposition.
Yeah, and I want to point out a couple of the really standout famous scenes. Of course, for those of you who are familiar with the musical, it has the chandelier
Mm,
scene.
yeah,
The chandelier scene is the big is a in the musical. It's a big deal. Okay,
yeah,
in this, it's still a big deal. The chandelier is one of the main parts with it falling. Um, the scene that I absolutely love is the Mask of the Red Death scene.
mm,
It's the only scene that's in color.
yeah,
Okay, they actually hand painted that over the cell. He's wearing the skull. There's not the picture of him in the whole costume here, but
right.
he's wearing like the skull mask, like the Edgar Allan Poe character,
Mm.
and it's creepy and it's
Yeah,
fantastic.
it's mesmerizing to watch.
Yes,
Considering it's just under 100 years old,
yeah,
you wouldn't think that the technology of the time would be able to translate something like that successfully. It
yeah,
really
yeah.
must have been something to see in person.
Exactly.
But 100 years later, sitting in the living room on the couch watching it, I remember the first time I saw it because you bringing it over was the first time I saw it.
Yeah.
I was just stunned.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
stunned, one, because they were able to capture it, two, because even 100 years later, Chaney is able to sort of convey his power.
Oh, yeah. He
He's
was
just, yeah,
yeah. His charisma, I said he's just fabulous in this. I mean, I can't obviously, I don't really know many actors from that time period,
right.
but he was it, man. He was like the big star back then, but he could act because of his theatrical background and the way he conveyed this character without really moving his lips either. I doubt he could talk with all the makeup and
Yeah,
the
he must have been.
prosthetics and stuff. But
The,
he's a
the only contemporary I can think of off the top of my head will be Lionel Barrymore.
yeah, yeah,
One of
that's
the
true.
Barrymores who
Yeah.
did who was most famous, I think, in the silent era for his portrayal of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
He
yeah,
had
yeah,
a
yeah.
very famous portrayal of Dr. Jekyll
Yeah.
and Mr. Hyde,
Yeah.
and that's a movie that we
Mhm.
should do a compare and contrast on that if you'd be
Yeah.
interested.
What I think
I'd like to say, hold on, real quick. I'd like to
yeah,
say this movie is in the public domain,
yeah,
so you
yeah,
can access a copy on YouTube, I'm sure. My personal preference, if you're going to watch this, you could probably find a streaming copy just about anywhere
mm,
because it is a silent film. One of the complaints I had, and it was the same complaint I had with Nosferatu, is that you need the music doesn't match. So if it's a
yeah,
silent
and
film, for me personally, watch it silently, and
yeah,
that's the power of that's the power of
and
the
I
film.
would I would recommend that there are, because this is public domain, there are thousands of different versions out there. The one I have wasn't the best quality. Um, they actually did, and I was saying this, Mike, to you before the show started. It reissued the movie in 1930 with a accompanying music. The famous
Mm,
when he's on the organ, the unmasking scene,
right.
which is what I was waiting for in the version we watched, but was totally gypped of it. So they added that. They actually had some of the original actors who were still alive come
Okay.
back and record their voices for their
Okay.
parts. So you got the sound part of that. But they, out of respect of Lon Chaney because he had died, they kept the Phantom silent. They kept all his title cards and his what he said in the silent film style. And then in the last 10 years or so, they have re-released it they basically use digital colorization to make the Mask of the Red Death scene. It pops. I mean, they make it like a lot. I mean, what we saw was fantastic for the time, but this is a lot. This is a lot
more
cleaner.
clear. Okay.
Yeah, this is a lot cleaner, and it pops. I mean, you could probably find it on YouTube too. I believe a Blu-ray just came out a couple of years ago.
Okay, that's interesting.
It's all over.
Hold on a second. We got John here, and he says he got to see Phantom in a movie theater with a live organist. The Red Death scene made people scream. John. And he said that Rudy Valentino and Charlie Chaplin were friends during Chaney's rule of the screen.
Okay.
One of the things that I noticed were the influences that probably what's the name of the writer? LaRue, Gaston LaRue. LaRue. There's clearly some Goethe. There's a Faust sort of influence there. You know, this deal with the devil. Christine is sort of making that deal for career advancement. You know, she's making a deal with this monster and then wants to get out of it. But later, you can see how other characters in more modern art, in film are portrayed. The Red Skull.
Yeah.
Honestly, you can see probably where Kirby and, Stan Lee and those, probably saw that and they're like, holy shit, the Red Skull, that sort of thing. We see it much later on when we get to the Wachowskis and we see it with Alan Moore in V for Vendetta.
Yeah, that's what you mentioned. You mentioned that when we were watching it.
Yeah, the masked person under the catacombs. Is sort of manipulating things. He kidnaps this young girl, and sort of takes her as his student.
And isn't he now? I haven't seen V for Vendetta in a long time, but isn't he when she's in his lair? What's that? Isn't he playing music from an opera?
He's playing from something. I can't remember what it is. I have it on Blu-ray. I haven't watched it in a long time.
Yeah. I will say too with the Phantom is that this dude is savage, man. When he kills Raoul's brother and he uses that little pipe as a snorkel to go under. This guy's got a lair that's like the friggin' Batcave. It's equipped with gadgets. Yeah, he's got like an alarm system, and then he has that thing where the water level rises and falls, and he can like go underwater with this like pipe thing.
When we got to the Mask of the Red Death, and you see how he just jacks that one guy, who's like sort of, he's very. Now I understand, having done the research, why he's offended that people are partying. Because if he was this person who was the lead inquisitor at this time of the Second Revolution, at this time of the Paris Commune, to see people treating, this place as some sort of like party hall.
Yeah,
this was an extraordinarily serious human being. The Phantom.
Yeah.
This character.
Yeah, and when you mention that, there's that reminds me a little bit of Grendel, where Grendel tells these guys to stop making noise so he can sleep, in Beowulf. Yeah. But yeah, Eric is I forgot Eric is the character's name. Now I did read there were a couple differences, obviously, in the novel and the movie, as far as he was apparently friends in the book. He's friends with Ledoux, or he's a one-time acquaintance.
But they have some background together. They have history
but
together.
They changed that when they were writing the title cards for the movie. And then his death in the book is different. His death in the book apparently is kind of lame. He dies of a broken heart while playing the organ. Yeah. But in this, they beat the shit out of him and throw him in the river.
They beat him to death and throw him in the river, and it just kind of ends. And
because
I didn't. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
I was going to say, because I didn't find the other characters very admirable.
Yeah.
You remember at the end, I was rooting for the Phantom.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that sucks.
I think we were talking about this. He reminded us both a bit of Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
without the context of him being the Inquisitor, because we don't know
Yeah,
about this in the
yeah,
edited version. So we're going on simply what's being presented to us. He's
yeah,
the Phantom is doing what the Phantom does. The creature
yeah,
did what the creature does. If
exactly.
you roll into his lair,
Creature's gonna creature. Yeah,
yeah, it's not going to work out too well for you. And this was the
yeah,
thing with the Phantom.
yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah.
this Christine character, she's interested in her career. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
until the unmasking. You know, and I
yeah.
didn't care much for Ledoux, and I didn't see much point to Raoul, and
They
so
were just I was actually wondering if they were going to die because they fell into that pit that he set for them. They had all those mirrors. Then there were like hot coals or some kind of fire. Like this dude had booby trap. I'm telling you, it was like he had all these crazy rooms and these traps and stuff. But yeah, it's kind of lame the way he did because he like remember he kidnaps her and steals that coach, the
yeah,
carriage, and
yeah.
then it like crashes and then he like the people catch up with him and just beat him down and throw him in the sand, and that's it. And
Well, you could see, and we were talking about this character. I don't know if we talked about it when we screened it, but I thought I wrote it down in the notes. There are elements of the Joker here.
yes,
There are elements of
yes,
the Joker here, this
yes.
madman that is just sort of roaming around unchecked, just causing mayhem. And, you know, one
Mhm.
man is able to incite all of this fear,
Yeah, yeah.
you know? So, I mean, this is the platform for a lot of characters that we're very familiar with today.
Oh yeah.
You know, when
He's
we,
it. He laid the groundwork. I mean,
yeah,
that's
I mean, but I mean, and so you think maybe a little bit before that, you know, you'd have Faust or something like that, but
yeah.
Faust isn't exactly, well, Faust is, yeah, that's another thing entirely.
Like I said, I think in terms of movie monsters, Hollywood movie monsters, I think Phantom's the first. Although I don't know if, when Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde came out, and if that was an English production, then that doesn't count. But I don't know.
Well, I
Um,
mean, even in Faust, I mean, Mephistopheles says, you know, I'm the enemy of all creation.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
he's a friendless. You know, he's you
Yeah,
know he's like the antithesis of all reality. And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
you know, this character sort of portrays that. He just,
I know.
you know, he
Yeah.
holds everything in contempt.
Yeah, he hates
He
everybody.
doesn't,
He has a
yeah,
grudge
he
against the
doesn't
world.
hesitate to
Yeah.
kill you, but he's just, and especially in the book, it's conveyed a lot better, I think. He's terribly lonely. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
in the end of the movie, where Christine begs for Raoul and the Ledoux's life, he lets her go also.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's how it ends in the book. And
Yeah.
then she comes back to find much later to find out that he's just died.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
whereas this, he's just mobbed in like 10 seconds, like 20 people beat him to death and they
Yeah.
just throw him in there. And
Yeah.
that's literally the end. Like they
They
throw him in the
swarmed
river
on
and
him,
it
man.
ends, and you're just
Yeah.
like, oh man, okay. And
But
yeah,
all those movies always ended abruptly. It was like, wait, what? I mean,
well, that's what happened with Frankenstein. When
yeah,
they
yeah,
originally the original Frankenstein, they just
yeah,
kept throwing torches,
yeah,
you know, at that windmill, you know, and then, you know, I mean, he comes back in like another year with the bride, but I mean,
yeah.
there's
Can't kill
a
Frank.
lot of those types of movies have that sort of mob thing going on.
Yeah, that was a popular thing back then. Let's
You
just
know,
have a mob.
yeah,
I mean,
lynch mob justice. You know, that was a
yeah,
thing back
yeah,
then. You know, unless it was
yeah,
Dracula, they were too scared.
yeah, yeah. And it didn't work in The Invisible Man either. So but
Eventually, it did though.
oh, it did. Oh, at the end, yeah.
That's what
I'm saying,
happened. They're just the mob just got too big and they
well,
just
that was the
swarmed him with
police.
guns. Yeah, the
That was
police.
the
It was
police.
police
Yeah,
mob.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah. I forgot. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
This is a, you know, I watched it and I liked it, and then I wrote up the review today for the episode, and then I'm like, I wasn't crazy about it, but now talking about it again, you know,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of to discuss
It
it. I'm thinking of it fondly, and you know, I wouldn't if you were to say, okay, I found that Blu-ray. I might
yeah.
consider buying it, or at least watching the restored version again,
Yeah, I'd
but with
like
the
to see
volume
that
down.
version. Yeah, I'd like to see it. It definitely I really enjoyed it, and it definitely holds its place as
Mhm.
one of the greatest horror movies ever made, and it certainly laid the groundwork for a lot of the other ones to come. I mean, yes, we had Nosferatu, which was in 1922. We had The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which is another fantastic horror movie. But excuse me, as far as if you're looking at at the Hollywood movies, this one really laid the groundwork. Because then after this, we got The Man Who Laughs. We got into the big ones, Dracula, Frankenstein. I was saying this was pardon me, this was produced by Carl Laemmle and his son, Carl Laemmle Jr., who also produced Dracula, Frankenstein, King Kong. All right, all the big ones. Okay. This was kind of their start, in the Universal. He was the Phantom was the
Universal
first
monster,
Universal monster, basically,
Hold on a second. We got John. He says a Phantom in 1925 is a monster. In 1987, with some Andrew Lloyd Webber music, Phantom is a romantic character.
Yeah.
Go figure. Go ahead.
No, I that's my quibble with the musical is that they make him into a patsy, and he's just like, he's got half a mask, and he's like real handsome on the one side, and it's like, no, have him be friggin' Lon Chaney ugly on the stage.
We talked about this. It's Broadway.
I know
it's way too gay to make it any sort of like
hardcore
Webber horror movie.
Like
Unless you got Clive Barker to direct it, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, you should have, because Andrew Lloyd Webber, kind of, turned him into a patsy.
Here's the thing. And I was reading a foreword for Dracula recently.
Yeah.
And they were talking about they got all the way up until like 2000, and they talked about Coppola's Dracula. And they talked about how Dracula had been secularized.
Yeah.
And, because Dracula is, for all, the devil's representative.
Yeah.
In Stoker's novel. But by secularizing him, you can make him a romantic character. Here we have this character who is, for its time 100 years ago, regardless of whether I agree with it or not, is being portrayed as a villain.
Yeah.
Just a dark-hearted black villain that kidnaps women. Yeah. Raoul is the hero.
Yeah.
Along with Ledoux, and these sorts of things. But here, 60 years later, you secularize it and you take away the black and white of good and evil, and you can make him a romantic character. 4 years later, Coppola did the same with Gary Oldman.
I know. And didn't Langella do that first with the making him a romantic character? And I always thought that was a detriment to Dracula.
The romanticism of Dracula occurred with Lugosi on the stage. Because they had to find a way to keep putting asses in the seats. Because horror isn't going to last forever on the stage. But making him romantic is going to keep drawing people. People are going to keep coming back to see that.
I didn't really see Lugosi as, like Gary Oldman's portrayal. Oh, she's the incarnation of my dead wife and all that nonsense.
I'm not talking about the movie. I'm talking about the stage, what he was doing on the stage before he went to production. But that was where the idea for sort of romanticizing him began.
Oh, okay.
That's where it began. Now, by the time we got to Christopher Lee, it got a lot more black and white.
Oh, yeah.
Christopher Lee was the devil. Yeah, he was the devil.
Because as we'll discuss soon, Hammer always does it right. Hammer delivers, man.
Yes.
Hammer delivers. And that's the thing. Christopher Lee understood the character. I'm not saying Lugosi didn't. Each person puts their own spin on it. But Christopher Lee was the Bram Stoker version. As far as I'm concerned.
He was always upset about, because of budgetary concerns, he couldn't have done something closer to Stoker's novel. He always wanted to have
seen a straight up adaptation with him and Peter Cushing. It would have been awesome. A straight up adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Absolutely.
I mean, hell, even if Christopher Lee, when he had his resurgence with Lord of the Rings and all that, and he was in his 80s, even if he had decided to bring back Dracula in his 80s, I would have seen it,
anything. Even if he had done some sort of animated, where he had just been the voice. If it had been loyal, I would have loved it. I would have loved it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm saying, all this is because of John's comment about, Andrew Lloyd Webber 60 years later. But by secularizing things and taking away the good and the evil components, it becomes just one sort of gray area.
Exactly.
And so it's easy to say, well, maybe he's just misunderstood.
And they always use that as
You
a
know,
cop out. He's just misunderstood. He's really a big softy.
but it is they do play. I feel that they do play a bit on that Beauty and the Beast
Oh yeah,
kind of,
it's
but
definitely Beauty and the Beast. And you got to think too, in Gaston Leroux's time, he was familiar with Beauty and the Beast. I mean, that's a French story, and it was around when he was writing this. The book was actually published in 1910, so it's
yeah,
actually newer than I thought it was. I thought the
yeah.
book was
The
published in
guy
the
who
1800s.
the guy who was the producer went to France
Okay,
and met Ledoux,
Leroux.
Leroux,
Oh, he was
and
still alive at the
they
time.
started
Okay,
talking. Yeah, he
okay,
gave him a copy of his book, and
yeah,
he said he read it in like a day, and
okay.
he instantly bought the rights to turn it into a film.
Oh, wow.
Hold on
I
a
wonder
second.
what LaRue thought of it, you know? Hey,
Well,
Eric.
he says good evening. I've never seen either version, but recently bought the Hammer version from '62.
Yeah.
Kudos to you, sir. I've never actually seen any Hammer horror
Oh,
yet.
my goodness.
That hurts,
Really,
bro.
Eric?
That hurts. That hurts. It
You got to
hurts,
check
man. It
out some
hurts.
Hammer.
Oh, yeah, man.
Actually,
You got to watch
Eric,
some Hammer.
if you want to check out some new Hammer, The Woman in Black
It's on
with,
Tubi, isn't it?
with Daniel Radcliffe is a Hammer production.
That is a fuck all of a horror haunted
my
house
goodness.
story. Harry Potter's in it, and you're like, "What the fuck? Harry Potter's in a horror movie?"
Michelle and I saw it, and we were just like,
fuck.
Woo, "Yeah, man, yeah, that's some Hammer right there."
Oh man.
Well, there is another. I was saying to you before the show started. There is another. The first remake of Phantom was in 1943 with Claude Rains as the Phantom.
Eric saw that one. Eric saw
just
that
talking about Eric. Yeah, Claude Rains is great. Hammers at home. That's right. Here comes a hammer.
Hammer time.
But if Claude Rains would be a perfect Phantom, I'll have to see that one. See how he treats it.
So let's transition over now to 1962.
Yes.
I own this movie as part of a Hammer box set with like the Brides of Dracula, which is just like, I watched that recently, and Peter Cushing is like the Jackie Chan of Van Helsing's. He's like fighting him from like every possible, like impossible stunts. Like the vampires at one end of the table and he's at the other. And Peter Cushing gets the idea, like Jackie Chan, to just throw the cross across the table so it slides and like hits him right in the face, and then he runs around. Awesome. I'm like, holy shit! He's like he's like a Jackie Chan, man. Okay, so it's got Curse of the Werewolf, and it has the Phantom of the Opera. This is directed by Terence Fisher, who is the godfather of Hammer directors. He directed Horror of Dracula. He directed The Curse of Frankenstein. He directed The Brides of Dracula. He directed The Curse of the Werewolf. So many of the Hammer classics were directed by Terence Fisher, and this is another one. And it's fucking good.
It really is,
This is a good fucking movie. This 1962 version with Herbert Lom.
Yes,
who we all know. Inspector Dreyfus from the old Pink Panther series. It's go ahead. It's really good.
It's got the great Michael Goff. Michael Goff was a Hammer go-to. He was in a lot of the Hammer movies, and he is a riot in this because he is look at that smarmy bastard. He's great in this. I mean, look at him. He's just,
Michael, go ahead.
No, Michael Goff just in this is just a weasel. And he's like, we were making the comparison that he's like Harvey Weinstein.
He's a Harvey Weinstein. It's a completely different setup from 25.
Yeah, it all takes place in England.
Yeah, it takes place in the London Opera, not the Paris Opera. Michael Gow is this lord who sort of, I don't know if he owns the opera, but
I think he does,
the owner of the music. And he is like a Harvey Weinstein kind of guy.
His face
with a casting couch. And like if he casts a woman, then he expects to take her out to dinner that night. And like, get it on. Like he thinks it's prima nocta or something like that. And he's just slimy the way that he goes about it.
Yeah.
But it starts off with I think the movie posters have been cut, and the sheet
Yeah.
music from somebody is sabotaging the performances
Hmm.
from this opera. Go ahead.
Yeah, and the Phantom his mask. Yeah, he has one eye there.
Yeah.
Okay. And so it's a vastly different mask from, and we should point out that in the Chaney version, he did wear that weird mask. Remember that mask? It was a
Yeah,
weird.
yeah, I didn't get an overlay for that.
No, it's fine. It looked like a human face, but it was just off-putting. It was very weird.
Yeah.
Um, and but this one, yeah, he's got, and the Phantom's kind of creeping, in the back. And in this version, he's got that friggin' little hunchback toady guy up on the thing and the fly.
The
But
Morlock, yeah.
you call him a Morlock, and it's just like who is this guy? I'm like, why does he have this little henchman? And it's just like, but that opening scene, is it the opening scene with the guy who's hung? And he crashes through the paper, the wall, the set, and it was like, whoa! It's like, well, this is a Hammer movie. That's what you're going to get.
This is a much more graphic movie.
Yeah.
The Phantom is portrayed as an antagonist and not a villain.
Yes,
and
he's a sympathetic character.
Yeah, he's a very sympathetic character. He's a person who was a musician,
Professor Petrie.
Professor Petrie, who was squeezed by Michael Gow to sell all of his music because he was just desperate for money. He sells his entire catalog. For like 50, British pounds,
$50,
which is like nothing. Yeah, $50. And then Michael Gow proceeds to put his name on all of his music and pass it off as his own because this other man is just an unknown. So he has no social status to fight this lord.
Yeah, he was wasn't he? He was a music teacher, wasn't he?
He was a music teacher, but Gow proceeds to cast all these productions using the music that he's stolen. And so in this attempt to get revenge, he sort of has a temper tantrum in this printing office where a fire and a chemical burn ensues, and he is disfigured, which is how he becomes the Phantom.
No, he's trying to destroy his work. Remember, he breaks in and he's trying to destroy. He lights the fire in the fireplace, and he's trying to destroy everything. And then I forget why he pours that acidic stuff for the plates.
I think he thought it was gasoline. I think he thinks it's water because at some point the fire gets away from him.
That's right.
It spills out of that furnace onto the floor, and this thing that he thinks is water is actually an accelerant, which splashes back on him and disfigures him. You don't see the extent of the disfigurement until the final scenes of the movie. But it's a really, really solid movie.
It's good. I mean, I noticed there were a few little comparisons, but not many. This Phantom is way different, I like his backstory. I like that he was just this regular dude who wrote this opera and wanted to, and thought he could count on Michael Gough and all this stuff, and was screwed over by him. So I like the personal vendetta connection there,
he has cause.
Yeah, but his whole thing with, and he wanted, like, it's kind of the same thing. He wanted Christine to perform for him, but he wasn't
romantically attached to her.
No, and he wasn't Chaney's version where he was kidnapping her and keeping her down. He wanted her to learn his music, and he was trying to teach her. He wanted her to learn the part and stuff like that.
As unbalanced as his behavior is, he was attempting to perform a kind act. Actually improve her abilities as a singer. Now he went about it in a really fucked up way.
Oh yeah.
But then again, he's kind of a fucked up guy. The character of Raoul is played by another guy here named Harry, and there's Christine, and they're doing a Joan of Arc opera. That's the opera that they're working on. And ironically, this part was actually written for Cary Grant.
Really?
Oh, wow. At that time, it was not an unknown thing to have American actors star in British movies.
Well, he was British.
Okay, so I mean,
Yeah.
American movie stars, I
Yeah,
guess,
yeah,
or the
yeah.
way that they
Yeah, yeah.
phrased it. But
Yeah.
this was originally designed for Cary Grant, but
Oh,
because of
wow.
other sort of, there was some
He
sort
would
of
have been cool in
snafus.
that.
I think
Yeah.
it would have been awesome to have Cary Grant in a
Ye
Hammer horror film.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
Cary Grant.
Oh, he's awesome. Yeah.
Notorious is one of my favorite. Is my favorite Hitchcock movie, and
Yeah. Yeah.
to watch Cary Grant do some Hitchcock is just an amazing thing. We're going to get to some Hitchcock in a
Yeah,
few weeks.
man.
We're going to start our Hitchcock trope,
Okay.
so we'll get down for that. But
Um,
this man, unlike the Raoul character, much more able-bodied,
Harry's with it, man.
much more
Yeah.
likable, much more likable.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
he's actually a decent human being, whereas you got Raul, just can't, to me, at least he came off kind of oily and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
I didn't find him likable.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, you know, and maybe we were talking about this before we went on, or maybe even at the beginning. I hope if I'm saying it again, let me know. You know, when we get back to the silent films, we have like Shrek, Max Shrek from Nosferatu, and like Lugosi, just the one character who just steals every scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, Lon Chaney. I mean, he just steals. Not so much necessarily with the Phantom in the '62 version.
Yeah.
You're
Herbert
curious
Lom
about
isn't a
him.
scene stealer.
No, he
No.
doesn't steal the scenes. Chaney stole every scene. Now, maybe it's
Yeah.
because these other actors are just, silent film actors and they're doing these overly flamboyant things,
Yeah. Yeah.
which he doesn't do.
No.
He
No, he
does.
doesn't.
It's a very sort of minimalist kind of
Yeah.
thing,
And
throughout the
yeah.
entire, the entire movie, which I think runs an hour and 45 minutes or 90
Yeah.
minutes or something.
Yeah. It's long for a silent movie. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a short
But
movie.
I think no.
Go ahead.
And no, I was gonna say I was it's interesting that they cast Herbert Lom as the Phantom because I don't know much of Herbert Lom's work. I know he used to do the Ealing comedies in the 50s with Alec Guinness and Peter Sellers, like the Lady Killers and all those things. Yeah, there he is. And that's my one quibble about this movie is that we didn't see his face until that last shot. You know, where he goes to save her. And yes, the chandelier scene is in this, only it's his little stupid Igor guy who's
Yeah.
being chased by the stagehands and he's hanging on the rope and the chandelier falls and it's going to kill her, but he jumps in front to save her and he gets crushed.
Well, there are definite elements of naturalism in this.
Yeah, yeah.
That both of these characters, Chaney and Herbert Lom, are just crushed by things that are just outside their power to control.
Yeah.
Both of them reach a certain point where he gets away from them. Although, I think Herbert Lom had a much more tangible antagonist.
I think so.
To fight against. Chaney, it was just the world. Chaney just hated the world.
Yeah,
this guy.
It was grounded more in realism.
Yeah. He was more human. John says Harry was likable because he was relatable. He was portrayed as a real guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like that. I like how they made Herbert Lom look just like a burn victim. Yeah. He's not crazy looking or anything. And I like that they took that approach. You weren't expecting to, I mean, maybe some people were expecting to see the Lon Chaney version, but each actor has made it his own. Like, I'd be interested to see what the Claude Rains one looks like, but like I said, Herbert Lom, I wasn't really familiar with. I'm not really familiar with a lot of his work. I thought he was fine in the part. I just,
and you actually got to see him, and we didn't mention this. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Just real quick, we got to see him before he was disfigured.
Yes, in the flashback.
When you go into the backstory, you actually and I'm like, oh, it is okay. Yeah, Herbert Lom. All right,
and that's cool. You get to see who he was. Yeah. And then, like I said, and I had that same quibble when we did Curse of the Werewolf. Like, he wasn't a werewolf a lot in the movie, only in that last part when they're chasing him around, Oliver Reed, and he's full on werewolf. It's kind of like they used and the same deal like with this. Like, I wanted to see the mask come off earlier, like in the Chaney version.
Yeah, we needed more werewolf with Oliver Reed.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like with this, I was waiting for the unmasking scene. I was waiting for Christine to like yank it off his face like she does in the other one. But I'm like, it's the last second of the last minute of the movie where he removes it and then jumps in front of the chandelier and gets killed. Yeah, I think they had a. It seems like they had a tendency to do that. Like you get the last, like the big thing at the end, and it's like, but you could have done something with that earlier. I don't know.
Well,
But it's
only
just,
with these two. I mean,
yeah.
obviously with Christopher Lee, you got all
Well,
the
yeah.
Dracula you could stand.
Well, yeah.
You got all the Frankenstein you could stand.
The Mummy. Yeah.
Yeah, the Mummy. Oh yeah, the Mummy is not a bad movie either.
The Mummy's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a
Curse
good
of the
movie.
Mummy. Yeah. Yeah.
I would like for us to do. We could do one more silent, at least one more silent comparison. Though I'd like for us to do a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I'd like to look at that Barrymore.
Yeah, that would be cool.
If we can, even if we find it on YouTube.
Yeah. Oh, my other complaint about this movie, and is that Michael Goff's character didn't get his comeuppance.
Rotten. That's what I'm saying. It's naturalism.
Yeah, it was just like
the bad guy always wins.
Yeah, he walks in there and he sees the Phantom, and the Phantom takes his mask off and he screams and runs out, and that's it. It's like, wait, and then he dies. The Phantom dies. And you're like, wait, that's the end of the movie?
I wanted to see Herbert Lom strangle him, just just choke him to death with his bare hands.
Yeah, and this is a movie that ends abruptly too. It's like as soon as he dies, oh, that's it, end of the movie. And it's like
this movie definitely had. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's just because Goff was such a slime ball. It's like you got to see this guy get his comeuppance, but he doesn't. He just runs out. And,
this was one of those ones. I think they said they only had like a $200,000 budget.
Oh, okay.
So that's next to nothing, even back then. Yeah. I think they said they ended up going to 400,000.
Oh, okay.
But even so, you probably could have thrown another 100 at it, and you would have could have used a little bit more. John says after he saw this, he said to his film teacher, "I wonder who the real creature was in this movie." Yeah, it's a much more human portrayal. Both of these, like I said, coming up on 100 years of the 1925 version, I'm sure you could probably pull a copy up on YouTube without a problem.
All over the place.
Yeah. The 1962 version, I got it as part of like a Hammer 8-pack. So I mean, you can.
I don't think it's one of their more well-known movies.
No, and it wasn't well reviewed.
Oh, really?
It wasn't well received. They did a lot of, but see, that's the thing. That's the thing about a lot of horror movies, especially ones that we cover here. They aren't initially well received.
No, the original wasn't. The original Phantom wasn't. Yeah,
and then as you continue to, review these, and you go through a generation or so, they begin to sort of breathe new life.
Yeah.
We said that the same thing about all those Carpenter movies. Almost every Carpenter movie that he's made has been bagged by the critics.
Yeah.
But it's the fans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That matter. Who gives a shit what Rex Reed thought? Or this guy, or Gene Siskel or Ebert, or Michael Medved, or any of those other, the New York Times. Fuck those people. It's the fans. And that's why we're here almost 100 years later talking about one movie, and then 60 years later, I mean, Herbert Lom's version turned 60 this year.
Yeah. Oh, you know what I did notice, and I didn't write this down, but I did notice in the Lom version, his Phantom, he doesn't kill anybody. It's the little hunchback that kills everybody.
Yeah.
In that.
Yeah.
The hunchback does. The Phantom doesn't kill anybody. He does.
Even
the guy who was hanging, the hunchback, the little Morlock guy did that, and he stabbed that other dude, the rat catcher. He stabbed him in the eye.
Holy
that was
shit!
Yeah,
he stabbed him with like a dagger out of like the Omen. Right in there. Holy shit!
I thought that was interesting though, because that guy just killed everybody, and but it was inexplicable killings. Like the Phantom didn't want anybody dead. It was just this guy, because he's this little mole person who lives in the sewer. He was he was mute, and he just was crazy. And so the Phantom's like, well, I can't really do anything with him.
Yeah, he was feral.
He's like, well, whatever. He just kills people. I can't do anything about it. I mean, it was,
Yeah. So, facts of life.
Yeah, yeah.
So it would be my strong suggestion to see both of these if you have an
Yes.
opportunity. Eric, I think Eric went off to do a stream with Marty right now.
Okay.
But if he owns that copy, he should watch it. Anybody that is catching this in the stream or in a replay should watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, just
Yeah, man.
catch
It's
it.
a
It's
And I
worthwhile.
said, like with Nosferatu, I said the original Phantom is a piece of film history. Um, and yeah, it's definitely for any horror fan who can go in with an open mind about silent films and just enjoy it for what it is. I mean, his
Yeah.
skill, he still is one of the scariest looking monsters ever. I mean, he still scares the crap out of people almost 100 years later with that makeup and stuff. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, it's worth it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so I think that, like I said, I would definitely like to get into this one more, at least one more, compare
Yeah.
and contrast with. I mean, we were talking also about some of the Redux. Maybe some of that. Maybe we could look at the Omen again.
Okay.
Or something like that. But I definitely like to get with the Silent, and
Yeah.
I'd like to look at. We haven't covered any Dr. Jekyll.
No.
There's
No.
supposed to
Well,
be a really good one with Frederick March.
okay.
Not the one
Is
with
that the
Go ahead.
is that the classic Universal one?
I
Or is
think
that
so, or it might be the one with Spencer Tracy, but I heard the one with Spencer Tracy isn't good at all.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
then they came out with that one within the past 20 or 30 years, Mary Riley. And
Oh, I saw that. I barely remember it.
that had
Malkovich. Yeah.
Malkovich. But then
Yeah.
you had to deal with Julia Roberts. And
Yeah.
that's a
I
rough
know.
balancing act, man. You're just
I
like, well,
don't
Malkovich is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Holy shit. Oh, wait, there's Julia Roberts.
I
She's the main character. Okay.
Yeah. I don't remember that movie at all. I saw it so long ago, but
We got to find a good. Maybe we'll find that Frederick March version or something. Maybe we'll
Yeah,
try to
yeah,
find.
yeah.
Hammer has to have done a Dr. Jekyll.
I'm sure they did. I'm sure it's somewhere. It's a British story, for crying out loud. I think that,
I'm looking at a text message from Eric, and he put it in the group, so you'll see it later of the Hammer movies that he bought. He just got them on Blu-ray. He got Phantom of the
Okay.
Opera. He
Nice.
got Dracula, Prince of Darkness, which is the sequel to Horror of Dracula.
Oh, jeez.
He's got Brides of Dracula. That's a fucking winner. That's the one where Peter Cushing brands himself right in the neck. And he's got Curse of the Werewolf.
Okay.
So he's got some. That's a nice place to start.
Yeah.
That's a good place to start.
Yeah.
All right. So I think this is as good a place as any to bring it to a close. Is that all right with you? All right. So we will look at the Dr. Jekyll. I'll see if there's a Hammer version out there.
I'll look around. Yeah.
We'll get to that. My thanks to the Ryan Daly, not to be confused with any other Ryan Daly out there. This is the original guy.
Yeah.
So we are here today talking Phantom of the Opera, but we will be back tomorrow at 8 p.m. To discuss A Tale of the Wendigo, a fantastic movie that is playing on Amazon and Tubi right now called Dark Was the Night with one of my favorite actors. I put him right up there with Ben Foster in terms of just being underrated. I'm talking about Kevin Durand. I love Kevin Durand and everything.
Guy, yeah.
Yeah, Kevin Durand is just a fantastic actor. And every time I see him in a movie, I'm like, holy shit, it's Kevin Durand. And I'll just sit down and watch because I know it's going to be good, or at least he's going to give a great performance.
Yeah.
We'll be there with that tomorrow. And then on Thursday, thanks to my friend Josh, we're going to kick off something new. We're going to be looking at our top 5 film and television series soundtracks or themes, which was an idea from a friend of mine. And I can't wait to get into that. That's going to be a lot of fun. So my thanks to Ryan. Hold on. We've got one more comment, and then we're going to, how about the silent film Metropolis?
That's science fiction. That's a fantastic film.
Maybe we'll look at it.
I have that
look at it for the summer or the fall.
Yeah, I have that one. That's a fantastic, the first science fiction film or one of them.
Okay.
But yeah, that's a good one.
All right. I guess that brings it to a close for tonight. Have a good one, everybody. Thanks for stopping in. If you see
All
this
right.
on the replay, I'm going to have to do this at the beginning more often. If you see us on Apple or Spotify or YouTube, or like or subscribe, leave a comment. That helps our traffic a lot. A one-word comment is fine. All the best, everybody, and have a good night.
All right.